At the school, everyone saw him as just a slow old groundskeeper. Teachers ignored him. Students made fun of him. But when the fire alarm went off, his leadership froze everyone in place. Because that man had served 30 years with the New York Fire Department, saving countless lives as a retired firefighter. Welcome to Human Stories. Before we begin this incredible story of hidden heroism, emergency leadership, and forgotten courage, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button and help us honor these quiet guardians. Captain Joseph Joe Murphy had been the groundskeeper at Lincoln Elementary School in Queens for 5 years now, and most days he felt completely invisible. At 64 years old, with graying hair and a slight limp from an old injury, he moved through the school halls carrying his maintenance tools like a ghost that nobody noticed. The children rushed past him without a glance. The teachers treated him like part of the furniture. The principal spoke to him only when something needed fixing, and even then, with the tone reserved for hired help. What none of them knew was that Joseph Murphy had spent 30 years with the New York City Fire Department, rising from rookie firefighter to captain of Ladder Company 15 in Manhattan. He'd responded to thousands of emergencies, saved hundreds of lives, and earned commendations that filled a wall at home. But that was his old life. Now he was just Joe, the guy who fixed broken playground equipment and trimmed hedges around the school. It was a Tuesday morning in October, and Lincoln Elementary was buzzing with the controlled chaos of 400 children going about their school day. Third graders were in art class, kindergarteners were having story time, and fifth graders were taking their weekly math test. Joe was in the boiler room, performing routine maintenance on the heating system. After 3 decades of responding to structure fires, he'd developed an almost supernatural ability to detect problems before they became emergencies. Today, that ability was telling him something was wrong. The smell was faint at first, the acrid scent of electrical burning. Joe immediately stopped his work and began tracing the source. His trained nose led him to an electrical panel that fed power to the school's main building. What he found made his blood run cold. One of the main breakers was overheating, with visible scorch marks around the connections. Worse, the panel was located in a storage room filled with paper supplies, cleaning chemicals, and other combustible materials. Joe immediately called the school office from his radio. "This is Joe in maintenance. I need Principal Martinez to evacuate the building immediately. We have an electrical fire hazard in the main panel room." The voice that came back was dismissive. "Joe, we can't evacuate the school for every little maintenance issue. File a work order and we'll look at it later." "Listen to me carefully," Joe said, his voice taking on an authority that hadn't been there before. "This isn't a maintenance issue. This is a fire emergency. You need to evacuate now." "Joe, you're not qualified to make that determination. Get back to work." Joe stared at the radio for a moment. Not qualified? He'd spent 30 years determining fire emergencies. But the school administration didn't know that, and there wasn't time to explain. He made a decision that drew on 3 decades of emergency experience. He was going to handle this himself. Joe ran to the nearest fire alarm pull station and activated it. The school's emergency bells began ringing throughout the building, and the automated evacuation announcement began playing over the intercom. Within seconds, classroom doors opened, and teachers began leading students toward the exits. But Joe could see from his position that the evacuation wasn't going smoothly. Some teachers were moving too slowly, assuming it was just another drill. Others were allowing students to stop and gather personal belongings. Joe knew something they didn't. Electrical fires in buildings with this much paper and cleaning supplies could spread incredibly fast. They had maybe 5 minutes before this became catastrophic. He ran toward the main hallway, where he found Mrs. Rodriguez, a first-grade teacher, struggling to keep her 6-year-olds in line as they moved toward the exit. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Joe said, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone who had commanded emergency scenes. "I need you to move these children faster. This is not a drill." Mrs. Rodriguez looked annoyed. "Joe, please don't interfere. We have procedures for fire drills." "Ma'am, this isn't a drill. There's an actual electrical fire in the building. These children need to be outside in the next 3 minutes." Something in Joe's tone made Mrs. Rodriguez look at him differently. He wasn't speaking like the quiet groundskeeper anymore. He was speaking like someone who knew exactly what he was talking about. "How do you know it's a real fire?" she asked. "Because I've been fighting fires for 30 years, Joe replied simply. He moved through the hallway, checking each classroom to ensure they were evacuating properly. In the third-grade wing, he found chaos. One teacher had panic-stricken students, another was insisting they walk single file like always, and a third was trying to save art projects from the classroom. Joe didn't hesitate. He took command. "Teachers, listen to me," he called out with the voice that had once commanded firefighters in burning buildings. "Leave everything. Move these children to the far end of the playground, away from the building." "Now who do you think you are?" snapped Ms. Patterson, the third-grade team leader. "You're just the maintenance man." Joe looked her in the eye. "Right now, I'm the guy trying to save your life and the lives of these children. Move." The authority in his voice was undeniable. The teachers began moving faster. By the time Joe reached the kindergarten wing, he could smell smoke beginning to filter through the ventilation system. The fire was spreading exactly as he'd predicted. He found Mr. Wilson's kindergarten class still in their classroom, with the teacher trying to explain to 5-year-olds why they needed to leave their stuffed animals behind. "Mr. Wilson," Joe said urgently, "I need you to carry the children who can't walk fast enough. We're out of time. I can't just carry students without permission from—" "I'm giving you permission," Joe interrupted. "As someone who's evacuated thousands of people from burning buildings." Mr. Wilson stared at him. "What?" But there wasn't time to explain. Joe could see smoke beginning to seep under the classroom door. "I'm Captain Joseph Murphy, retired FDNY. I've been fighting fires since before you were born. Right now, these children's lives depend on moving fast. Help me get them out." Mr. Wilson's expression changed instantly. He began scooping up the smallest children while Joe guided the others toward the exit. As they reached the main hallway, Principal Martinez appeared, looking confused and angry. "Joe, what's going on? Why did you pull the fire alarm without authorization?" Joe turned to face her, and for the first time since he'd started working at Lincoln Elementary, he spoke with the full authority of his 30 years of service. "Principal Martinez, my name is Captain Joseph Murphy, FDNY, retired. There is an active electrical fire in your building that started in the main electrical panel and is now spreading through the ventilation system. I activated the alarm because waiting for your permission would have cost lives." Principal Martinez's mouth fell open. "Your what?" "Ma'am, we can discuss my qualifications later. Right now, I need you to call 911 and request engine and ladder companies. Tell them we have a structure fire at an elementary school with 400 students evacuating." By now, the last groups of students were reaching the playground. Joe did a quick mental count. Everyone was out. But his job wasn't finished. He ran back toward the building to do what he'd done thousands of times before: a primary search to ensure no one was left behind. "Joe, where are you going?" Principal Martinez called after him. "To check every room," he called back. "It's what we do." Joe moved through the building with the systematic efficiency of someone who had searched burning structures for 3 decades. He checked every classroom, every bathroom, every storage closet. The smoke was getting thicker, but his training allowed him to navigate through conditions that would have stopped others. He found what he was looking for in the school nurse's office. Tommy Patterson, a second grader with asthma who had been resting when the alarm went off. The boy was conscious but scared and having trouble breathing. "Hey, buddy," Joe said calmly, scooping Tommy up. "I'm Joe. I'm going to get you outside where you can breathe better, okay?" As Joe carried Tommy through the increasingly smoky hallway, he could hear sirens approaching. FDNY was arriving. He emerged from the building just as Engine 235 and Ladder 148 pulled up to the school. Joe immediately approached the incident commander, Lieutenant O'Brien. "Lieutenant, I'm Captain Murphy. FDNY retired. I initiated the evacuation. Primary search complete. All occupants accounted for. Fire originated in main electrical panel, ground floor, east wing. It's spreading through the HVAC system." Lieutenant O'Brien looked at Joe with surprise and recognition. "Captain Murphy? Joe Murphy from Ladder 15? That's right. Jesus, Cap, what are you doing here?" "I work here now." "Groundskeeper?" O'Brien shook his head in amazement. "Should have known. Only you would spot a fire before our sensors went off." As FDNY crews deployed into the building, Joe walked Tommy over to the paramedics to have his breathing checked. The boy was fine, just scared. Principal Martinez approached Joe. Her expression completely changed from anger to amazement. "Joe, Captain Murphy? I had no idea." "No reason you should have," Joe replied simply. "But you're Captain Joe Murphy. My husband is a firefighter at Engine 54. He's told me stories about you. You're legendary in the department." Joe adjusted his maintenance uniform and picked up his tool bag. "I was a firefighter. Now I'm a groundskeeper. Both jobs are about keeping people safe." Over the next hour, as FDNY brought the fire under control, word spread through the crowd of evacuated students, teachers, and parents. The quiet maintenance man who had saved their school was Captain Joe Murphy, one of FDNY's most decorated officers. Mrs. Rodriguez, the first-grade teacher, found Joe as he was checking on students. "Captain Murphy, I owe you an apology. When you tried to help with the evacuation, I should have listened." "You were doing your job," Joe said, "protecting your students. That's what matters." Ms. Patterson, the third-grade teacher who had challenged his authority, approached more hesitantly. "I looked you up on my phone," she said quietly. "Medal of Valor, Unit Citation, 9/11 Response Commendation. You saved hundreds of lives during your career." Joe nodded once. "That was my job then." "And today?" "Today my job was to keep the school safe." Mission accomplished. Mr. Wilson, the kindergarten teacher, brought over the children Joe had helped evacuate. "Kids, this is Captain Joe. He's the hero who got us all out safely." The 5-year-olds looked up at Joe with wide eyes. One little girl tugged on his shirt. "Are you a real firefighter?" she asked. Joe knelt down to her level. "I used to be. Now I take care of your school. But if there's ever trouble, I'll always make sure you're safe." As the afternoon progressed and parents came to pick up their children, Joe found himself in an unusual position. He was being treated like a hero instead of being invisible. But what surprised everyone was that Joe didn't seem to want the attention. He kept trying to get back to work, checking the playground equipment and watering the plants as if nothing had happened. Principal Martinez found him trimming hedges near the flagpole. "Joe, Captain. What should I call you? Joe is fine. It's what I answer to here. Joe, I want to apologize for how we've treated you. If I had known. You treated me exactly how I wanted to be treated. Joe interrupted gently. Like a normal person doing a normal job. But you're not normal. You're a hero. Joe looked up from his hedge trimming. I was a firefighter for 30 years because I wanted to help people. Now I'm a groundskeeper for the same reason. The uniform changed, but the mission didn't. 3 weeks later, Lincoln Elementary held a special assembly. It wasn't to honor Joe's firefighting career. He had specifically asked them not to do that. Instead, it was to thank all the school's support staff, the custodians, the cafeteria workers, the security guards, and the groundskeeper. But Joe noticed something different. Teachers stopped to chat with him in the hallways. Students waved when they saw him working outside. Parents thanked him when they dropped off their children. The invisible man had become visible, not because of his past accomplishments, but because people finally understood that the quiet person taking care of their school was someone who truly cared about their safety. Dr. Sarah Chen, a parent and emergency room physician, approached Joe after the assembly. Captain Murphy, my daughter Emma is in Mrs. Rodriguez's class, the one you helped evacuate. How's she doing? Joe asked. She's fine, thanks to you. But I have a question. The hospital where I work is looking for a safety coordinator, someone to help us improve our emergency procedures. Would you be interested? Joe considered the offer. Thank you, but I like it here. These kids need someone watching out for them. Dr. Chen smiled. That's exactly why we need you at the hospital. But I understand. As she walked away, Joe returned to his work. He had hedges to trim, playground equipment to inspect, and a school to keep safe. Some heroes never stop being heroes. They just find new ways to serve. Done. Others find peace in quiet service, using their skills wherever they're needed most. Captain Joseph Murphy never needed anyone at Lincoln Elementary to know about his 30 years with FDNY. He wasn't looking for respect or recognition in his groundskeeper job. He was simply doing what he'd always done, keeping people safe. The training was still there when it was needed. The leadership was still ready to emerge in a crisis. But most days, it was content to ensure that children had a safe place to learn and grow. Real heroes don't retire from helping others. They just find different ways to serve. Have you ever discovered that someone working quietly around you had an extraordinary background? Someone whose hidden service surprised you when it mattered most? Share their story in the comments below. And if stories like this remind you that everyday heroes work among us, subscribe to Human Stories. We're here to honor the quiet guardians who keep us safe in ways we never notice. See you in the next story.